When we look at the history of morality, or more specifically the history of justice, we can come to a few different conclusions. One, that the history of morality is a history of shame and honor. This view, held predominantly in Eastern cultures, defines the genealogy of morals as a long history of shameful actions and honorable people. The second conclusion is perhaps more Western and progressive in nature, that our morality as a human race progresses, and that we get better as time goes on. The people of yesterday aren't as good as the people of today, and tomorrow will perhaps be better as the natural selection of morality weeds out the evildoers. Finally, there is the conclusion that the history of morality is not a progress, nor is it a dichotomy of oppressor and oppressed, the shameful and the honorable, but rather it is that all societies, across all time, distort one thing or another, but all aim towards a general morality that expresses itself in different ways. This view, ostensibly, would argue that the America today is just as evil as the America of the 19th century, or even perhaps as evil as Sodom and Gomorrah. At the heart of this debate is really an understanding of justice, and what it is and how different societies have viewed justice. A philosophical understanding of the word and its meaning will perhaps give us greater insight into which of these broader conclusions we should come to about the history of morality and how morality plays in our lives today. Plato's Republic contains potentially an apocryphal story of Socrates discussing with Plato's brother Glaucon the nature of justice and how people in a society act upon justice. In an attempt to challenge Socrates' understanding of justice, Glaucon tells the story of Gyges of Lydia, a popular story in Greek culture. The story goes that there is a man, Gyges, who is a shepherd for the lady Lydia. One day he is grazing in the field with his sheep, and there is a violent thunderstorm, and an earthquake erupts and opens a chasm in the earth near where he was shepherding. Amazed, he goes down into the cave and finds a hollow bronze horse with a corpse inside wearing nothing but a golden ring. In his amazement, he takes the ring and carries it back to the surface. In the weeks to come, Gyges wears the ring at one of the kingdom's councils. Sitting there, he fiddles with the ring and turns the setting towards himself. Immediately, he becomes invisible, and the people around him have no idea where he's gone. Amazed by this, Gyges tests the ring and continues to flip it outwards and inwards and towards himself, and he finds that indeed flipping the ring towards himself makes him invisible. Immediately when he realized this, he arranges a plan to sneak into the kingdom, seduce his wife, and indeed he does. And then, finally, he attacks the king and takes over the kingdom. Finishing this story, Glaucon concludes this: "Now no one, it seems, would be so incorruptible that he would stay on the path of justice or stay away from other people's property. When he could take whatever he wanted from the marketplace with impunity, go into other people's houses and have sex with anyone he wished, kill or release from prison anyone he wished, and do all other things that would make him like a god among humans. Rather, his actions would be in no way different from those of an unjust person, and both would follow the same path." The assumption that the men bring is, of course, that justice is nothing more than the societal pressures that a state creates for its commoners. The men discuss that indeed a just person is merely just because of the society around him, and it is in fact shame that brings him towards doing just things. Though a true and just person would benefit from all of the goods of a society, a just person would benefit from the onlooking of the society. This, of course, is a common trope throughout all of history, that justice and moreover morality is merely construed and constructed by the other's gaze. In Being and Nothingness, Jean-Paul Sartre, a writer and philosopher of the early 20th century, describes a famous thought experiment. Imagine that you are walking through the woods. You could see the grass, the bench, the trees. As you are walking in the far distance, you begin to see what looks like a man. In this scenario, all of the sudden your surroundings, all that which you see, becomes not merely an aspect of your existence, but an object for another person. The grass, the bench, the trees, all become objects of yours and his experiences. Furthermore, imagine that the man then turns towards you. He looks upon you. And in the same way that you looked upon the benches and the trees and the grass, and they became objects for your experience, you then become an object for his experience. This objectifying of the self brings about what he calls shame. Sartre concludes from this that, of course, it is the onlooking of the other that creates the pressures of morality. It is not objective itself, but it is the objectifying of the person that creates morality. The gross weight of shame binds our emotions, feelings, and spirit to actions commanded only by an arbitrary society. The watchful eye defines our angst and fears. If man were truly alone and subjected to a real metaphysical island, indeed he would give himself over to all debauchery and evil which befits him. And if he were placed in an all-seeing society, he would act only according to their rules, not unto a genuine understanding of the good. Moreover, this same man would wish to isolate himself and escape the dogmatic rule of the society. He would hate the laws not because he dislikes the morality contained within them, but merely because they are indeed laws. The Ring of Gyges perhaps says the things we are too afraid to say, that people, us, only act according to which context we were born. This is not a happy call to freedom and relativism, but a frightful and terrifying realization of the finitude of our moral compass and of the morality of our neighbors. That they too might not just steal from us merely because they were seen, they would be hated by society for being unjust. They do not act cordially with us because of their love of man, but because of their fear of him. In many ways, there is, of course, truth to this. Some societies create rules and arbitrary laws against dress and manners and how to act in the society. However, more importantly, there is something so seemingly universal about all societies at large. Though many of the tangential rules and regulations might seem arbitrary and meaningless, there is seemingly a universal good to which all moralities and laws aim. Justice, it seems, is different in all societies and in all perceptions. Even though it may look the same, the thoughts about how it came about are different. Importantly, there should be made a distinction between epistemology and ontology. One, how in which we come to know justice, and two, how in which justice is in itself. Because of our arrogance, we often conflate epistemology and ontology, merely because we trust our reason to find objective truth. And because all societies have different understandings of morality, though their reason might find objectivity, thus we must conclude that morality is subjective. However, we must not place all of our trust in the way in which we know things. Our reason can often lead us astray. If we understand morality as an end rather than a means, this becomes very clear. That morality itself is the end, and the way in which it looks in different societies is the means. Though we do see many different moralities and laws throughout all time and places, we see one common end. The flourishing of a society is always the end. But we must ask, why indeed is this in itself good? At the heart of this, we cannot say that it is good subjectively, because all societies aim towards this. It cannot be a random stroke of luck that all societies across all times and places desire the flourishing of itself, desire to live. For why indeed is this good? Why indeed ought we pursue the good of the society rather than the good of ourselves and ourselves alone? Our epistemology of morality, in the way in which we think of it, which is often in the case of ethical laws and customs, is often subjective, and only subjective. But the common good and the common aiming is always objective. So though the perception of justice and how one is to act is determined by one's context, the very fact that justice is aimed at all shows the universality of it.